Hello, I'm continuing my reviews on the Omen series with Omen IV: The Awakening. Now, Omen IV: The Awakening is, of course, the fourth film in the Omen series, and this was actually a made-for-TV movie which aired on Fox in 1991. Now, at this time, Fox was a relatively new channel, and there was sort of this short-lived period of time where Fox was trying to do a lot of these made-for-TV sequels to well-known horror franchises. Like, around the same time, they also did one of the Amityville sequels. I think Amityville 4, but don't quote me on that. Now, I do want to point out that there was actually a series of Omen novels. Now, the first three novels of the Omen book series were just novelizations of the first three movies. However, after the third book, which was based on the third movie, the series kind of went off in its own direction. Now, before this movie, there was actually a book called Omen IV, and there was an Omen V novel as well. But to the best of my knowledge, this movie has nothing to do with either one of those books. Now, not counting the 2006 remake of The Omen, in my opinion, Omen IV: The Awakening is easily the worst of the Omen franchise. This movie sucks. It really does, and honestly, there are points in this movie where it almost feels like they're making a parody of The Omen rather than a legit Omen sequel. But no, apparently they really wanted you to take this seriously, which in a way almost makes it funnier because, once again, this movie really does blow. Now, I first saw this movie when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I don't remember liking it much then, but I remember not totally hating it then. I just recently rewatched it for this review, and yeah, honestly, I really hated this freaking movie. And honestly, the only thing I really liked about this movie was probably Michael Lerner. I thought Michael Lerner was really good in this movie as this private eye detective, and I thought his character was really good, but he was really the only thing I took out of this movie positively. That, and honestly, I did not mind the actress who played Delia in the movie. I actually thought she did a really good job, even though she was so young in the movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's no Harvey Stevens, but I didn't think she was that bad in this movie. Now, the plot of Omen IV is it follows this married couple named Jean and Karen York, who are attorneys who want to have a child, but it turns out that Karen can't conceive. So they end up adopting this baby girl, who they eventually name Delia. The movie then jumps ahead to different periods of Delia's life, but most of the movie takes place when Delia is 8 years old. And Delia is a very troubled young girl who doesn't have any friends, but she's actually very intelligent. But in the movie, it's eventually revealed that Delia has supernatural and possibly demonic powers. And her nanny is the first person to realize that something is horribly wrong with Delia, but eventually Karen starts to realize it as well, but nobody will believe Karen. And this is kind of a plot spoiler, but I don't really care. Eventually in the movie you find out that Delia is actually Damien's daughter. Now, in the third Omen movie, The Final Conflict, Damien developed a bit of a romantic relationship with this journalist named Kate Reynolds, and there was a certain point in that movie where they had sex, and you're kind of supposed to assume that Delia is the child that was conceived when Damien and Kate had sex in The Final Conflict, and I guess you're supposed to assume that maybe Kate had Delia shortly after the events of that movie and then gave her up for adoption. So yeah, the reason Delia is the way she is in this movie is because she's actually Damien Thorn's daughter. And Karen's husband Gene is actually a politician, and he's really rising in the world of politics, so this is a very political family, so that's sort of how Delia is going to rise in the world of politics, and in the movie it's implied that she will eventually get to a position of world power when she's an adult. But here's where the movie gets really, really stupid. In the movie, Karen does eventually get pregnant, and I don't want to give away how she gets pregnant, because they do explain later on how she does get pregnant, and it's weird, to say the least, but basically she gets pregnant with a newborn baby boy, and it turns out this baby boy is actually the reincarnation of Damien. And that's fucking stupid to me, because it's like, okay, then what was Delia's role in all this? Like, why couldn't Delia become the next Antichrist? Why does it have to be a reincarnation of Damien? What's wrong with Delia being, like, this new Antichrist or something? What, because she's a female, she can't be a world leader or something? Now that's sexist. Like, seriously though, if Karen's baby was the reincarnation of Damien, what in the fuck was the point of Delia? But yeah, the movie is mostly pretty boring, at least until Michael Lerner's character comes into the picture, and I actually really liked Michael Lerner in this movie. Once again, he plays this private eye detective who, in the movie, is hired by Karen to look into who Delia's actual birth parents are. But once again, he was really the only great thing about this movie. And also, are we forgetting, if this is in continuity with the final conflict, are we forgetting that the second coming of Christ also exists in this universe now? I guess we're just gonna forget that plot point that was established in Omen 3. And once again, the movie is pretty boring, but there's also a lot of really awkward editing in this movie. Like, there are points in the movie where the camera focuses on somebody's face, and it clearly makes it look like this person is about to talk, but then it cuts away from that person, and once again, there's a lot of stuff like that in the movie. You have this whole subplot in the beginning of the movie about New Age mysticism, which goes nowhere. You have a couple of really unintentionally hilarious scenes, like, there's this scene in this movie where Delia's nanny takes her to this, like, new-aged psychic fair, and then Delia sets the fair on fire, and the scene should be horrifying, but it ends up being unintentionally hilarious. There's also a certain point in this movie where Michael Lerner's character sees these Christmas carolers who, later on in the movie, turn into demons, and it should be a horrifying scene, but once again, it's a scene that comes off as being unintentionally hilarious because, I don't know, the demon Christmas carolers just looked really freaking goofy in my opinion. And also, the music in this movie is god-awful, except when they're actually using samples of the original Omen score. Most of the music in this movie doesn't even remotely fit the film. Most of the music in this movie actually sounds like it should be in a comedy for kids. Like, most of it doesn't even sound like horror movie music. And honestly, most of the movie is really just a loose remake of the first Omen movie, only instead of a little boy, it's a little girl. But once again, they do nothing with the whole idea of a little girl being the Antichrist, because, once again, Damien gets reincarnated in this movie, so Delia is almost a completely pointless character. So yeah, as you could probably tell, I'm really not a very big fan of Omen 4. This movie sucks, and in my opinion, not counting the remake, this is the worst of the Omen franchise. Now, even though the final conflict I thought had its problems, I at least thought it was a decent conclusion to the Omen series. It wrapped up the story really well, and in my opinion, there was no need for this sequel. Now, if you you like this movie, that's perfectly fine. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, so if you like the movie, that's cool. I mean, you obviously see something in the movie that I don't, and that's fine, but once again, in my opinion, the movie sucks. And honestly, I'm probably gonna forget all about this movie once I'm done with this review. Now, this was the final film of the original Omen series, but there was a 2006 remake of The Omen. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing the remake because I usually don't review remakes, like when I'm reviewing all the films of a particular franchise. I usually exclude the remake unless I feel like the remake brings something new to the table. And in the case of the Omen remake, from everything I've heard about that movie, apparently it's a shot-for-shot remake of the original film. It's kind of like the Gus Van Sant remake of Psycho in a lot of ways from what I've heard. Now, I've never seen the Omen remake, and honestly, I really have no intention to. So yeah, since I'm not going to be reviewing the remake of The Omen, the next horror movie that I'll be reviewing for Horror Month is the 1988 William Lustig film, Maniac Cop. So stay tuned for that review, and bye.